And let's continue on with our study of some of the conifers or evergreen trees common in the Appalachian Mountains. Some of the lower Great Lakes have the proper soils for these pines, and parts of the upper Ohio Valley do as well. So not the whole area covered by this channel, but large pieces of it. Well, I'm in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains today. These are the eastern foothills in New London County, Connecticut, rolling to steep hills. They're not real tall, but it's still mountainous terrain. And we're on the east slope of what's called Mount Misery in New London County, Connecticut. This is public ownership. It's part of the Patchogue State Forest. And I've got the cones of a white pine tree in my sight. And I'll tell you what, when these trees are really dropping cones, there's thousands of them just littering the forest floor. And as you can see, likewise amounts of white pine seedlings. And these are coming from some very large white pine trees. Let's look at a mature bark on a white pine tree. It is fairly deeply furrowed. Unlike the pitch pine, which I've done some work on lately, as this tree gets larger, it develops furrows, probably a couple inches deep there. Deep as the bottom half of my finger. It develops those deeper cracks and furrows. So it can be distinguished from a pitch pine and the Table Mountain pines, which I've also brought into this channel. I'm not that familiar with the shortleaf pine. I'm not sure if I'll ever find some for this channel, but it does show up on the range maps in the area I'm trying to cover. So I don't know if this would resemble a shortleaf pine or not. I don't believe it would. And it does not resemble the Virginia pine. So this is unique amongst the 5 pines that I'm trying to introduce. It's also unique because it has 5 needles in the bundle, in the fascicle. Got a quarter there for scale, so they're probably about 3 inches long, and you can see 5 needles from that fascicle. And the cones are longer and much more narrow than the other pines I've introduced. I've got the cone right there, and the dollar bill, so they're about 3 to 4 inches long, but only maybe an inch and a quarter wide. And they just kind of dropped right on this boulder here. I thought that'd be a good place to make the video. Mother Nature gave us a little nice place to start this. So yes, we got a deeply furrowed bark. We've got unique shape to the cones, and it's a much softer feel to these pine trees. You rub up against these other pine trees with your finger, and it's bristly. It's kind of, if you touch it with the end of your hand like this, it's kind of pointy and jabs you a little bit. This is a very soft pine to the touch. It's a beautiful tree. It's very common in New England. It's common in the Appalachian Mountains, and some of the ridges at least, maybe not in the valleys or coves. But I've seen it as far south as the Great Smokies, and it's common in parts of West Virginia. And can reach great size. I've seen them 3 or 4 feet in diameter. This one here is probably 2 feet in diameter. I doubt it's even 100 years old. They grow very quickly. And it's a common landscape plant. It requires acid soils for it to self-propagate. Sandy acid soils, that's where you find it. But it will grow in limestone soils. Where I live, people plant it in their yards, and it does just fine. It just will not occur there naturally. So this is its natural habitat. This is kind of a rocky, almost a sandy soil here, where near a waterway here, there was probably large amounts of sand deposited here during the runoff of the Ice Age, the glacial runoff. Large areas of sand plains around here. So that's where I often find it, and in the steeper mountainsides that aren't too terribly dry. It can often even be found right next to pitch pine if it's not too severe of a too bare of a ledge, like up on Lantern Hill the other day. I mentioned the pitch pine. There was actually some white pine on the other side of that as well. But the most extreme ledges, you'll find pitch pine or Table Mountain pine or Virginia pine only. This one requires just a little bit more of a soil to get established. But a very common tree, and one that you'll often find hiking in the areas covered that I just mentioned.